All right. Hi there, everybody. This is Denis Horrigan from Connecticut Wealth Management. I have Kevin Leahy, the President and CEO from Connecticut Wealth Management. And today we are joined by Jay Sattler. He's the Managing Partner in charge of tax services for Blum Shapiro, an accounting firm with offices throughout New England. So first of all, Jay, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you spending time here. The idea behind this is we have a number of business owner clients and friends who are, faced with some pretty extreme challenges these days, and
Right.
we wanted to bring to them some information about some possible solutions for them, some different remedies that the government has come up with to try to help them out. So, thanks for joining us. I imagine that you're in the midst of tax season. This coronavirus pandemic could not have come at a worse time of the year. Not that there's ever a good time to have a pandemic, but this is about the worst. You guys hanging in there? How y'all doing?
I'm not sure it's ever a good time to have a tax filing season either. So, pick your battle. But yeah, things are well. We're definitely busy. As you had mentioned, we're still trying to facilitate the filing of as many tax returns as we can, either from an individual perspective, mostly to try and have their refunds processed and put some liquidity in their hands, but also pushing the business filings as well. And again, if there are no refund situations out there, it's important to also have a handle on what the tax liabilities may look like so they can best manage their cash flow during some of these difficult times.
Yeah.
So Jay, I'll jump in. Again, as Denis said, thanks for joining us, number one. So if you put taxes aside a little bit, where are, obviously you deal with lots and lots of business owners. Where's the greatest concern? Where do you see people focusing their time and
Sure.
frankly anxiety?
Yeah, I mean it's and thank you for having me on, by the way. I think from what we're hearing, the business anxiety is really focused on, I think, what's happening with the economy in general, what's happening with their individual businesses, whether they're forced to have very difficult discussions within their own operations in terms of entertaining the possibility of layoffs, furloughing some employees. How is this health crisis impacting their business? How long may it last? What's happening to their revenue stream? Assuming their doors are even open. I mean, so many businesses have been forced to quarantine or work remotely. So to some degree, that's had a dramatic impact on the business community at large. And I think the overriding anxiety is really revolving around all of those issues. And as Denis had mentioned, what's come to light, especially as of last week with the stimulus package and the CARES Act being passed, is what within that package might be available to them to really help these businesses weather the storm as best as possible.
Yeah. So, Jake, hopping on that, obviously, the federal government has put together a pretty broad package of, to me, it seems more like relief than it is stimulus, but we'll call it what you will. Of what they rolled out last week, what do you think is going to be the most impactful, the most important, the thing that business owners should be focusing on?
Sure. Yeah. So from a business perspective, there's really two categories of legislation within that package. One is really more of the tax-driven elements of the package, softening some net operating loss provisions, and passing additional aspects of the legislation that might accelerate some deductions and just put businesses in a friendlier tax position, if you will. But I think really the meat of the legislation and what is going to be near and dear to so many businesses and really help them survive through this health crisis is the potential SBA loan that's out there and what might be available to so many businesses. And that's where we are really trying to help our clients understand what the options are and how they can take advantage of it.
So those programs that are being offered, there seems to be some confusion. I'm confused. I've read so much about it. I've heard a lot about it. But when is that all going to kick off? When do those loan programs kick off? And just practically, where do people go? where do they go to apply for those loans?
Yeah, so, and because there are so many different options within this legislation, just to be clear, I think the loan provision that you're specifically referring to, which is really at the heart of this legislation, is the Paycheck Protection Program, SBA loan. And what's happening is that the SBA is drafting guidelines, if you will, that will then be shared and facilitated by SBA approved banks. Okay. And once that information is up and running, which we believe will be in the next few weeks, and there were some guidelines put in place in the legislation to make sure it all happens within that time period. What should be happening is that the business community at large should be contacting either the SBA, or they should be working with their lender or their existing banking relationship, because most of these loans will be facilitated through the bank.
Okay. All right. So we don't know all the guidelines yet. But what do we know about the loan guidelines?
Yeah, so you're right. There's still a fair amount of details that are still to be released, and the banks and the SBA are working hand in hand to fine tune what some of those details are. But we do have a broad brush look at what the eligibility is and what some of the underlying benefits are associated with it. So this SBA loan that is so often referred to is going to come to a business being eligible to receive and apply for and receive a loan that essentially is 2.5 times their average monthly payroll over the last 12-month time period. There are some pluses and minuses to that. You get to add in medical care, retirement benefits, and things of that nature in the definition of your average monthly payroll cost. You do have to subtract out payroll taxes and income tax withholdings. But essentially, once you go through a few of those hoops, the amount that a business is eligible to apply for is 2.5 times the average monthly payroll cost over the prior 12-month time period.
And Jay, is it true that at some point that loan may actually be have the potential to be forgiven?
That's right, and I think that's why, when all the dust settles, and we reflect back on this legislation at what may be the most beneficial aspects of it, I think that's where this SBA loan is really going to rise to the top, because there are other benefits, there's payroll credits, there's other loan provisions, but this is really at the heart of the legislation. Because you're right, what happens is come June 30th, the businesses who receive this loan provision will be able to run a few metrics to determine how much, if not potentially all of the loan, may be forgivable. And what's not forgiven does have to be repaid, but it can be amortized out as far as 10 years at a fairly low interest rate. So to have the ability for the business community to apply for loans through the SBA, potentially receive checks within a few weeks, if not a month or so. And on the back end, by June 30th, if certain metrics are met, potentially qualify to have most, if not all of that loan forgiven is remarkable, for lack of a better word.
And is it true that if the loan forgiveness actually will not be taxable?
Right. So, if that's not enough of a benefit, they actually added language. You're absolutely right. That specifically addressed the fact that if you do qualify to have some or all of the loan forgiven, it's not even going to be taxable. So it really is an olive branch to the business community to help weather such a difficult time period.
So let me see if I got this right. So some of the guidelines have been already determined.
Right.
They're still determining more of the guidelines, which should be wrapped up, like you said, in the next week or so. And then should business owners start going to their lender or to the SBA and start applying, or should they do that now?
Yeah, so what we're recommending through talking to our clients and the business community at large is they start preparing for this application process if they think they may qualify. There will be a fair amount of information that will need to be provided in this application. All of your monthly payroll data, your payroll filings, and a host of other information will need to be included in this application. So I think the best course of action is to prepare for that application. And then once the banks are up and running and the application is live, they can then contact their SBA approved bank and begin that application process. And the legislation does provide that the applications will be reviewed very, very quickly. And for those who are approved, checks will be issued within a week or two.
This has got to be just I mean, everything about this whole pandemic is unprecedented, right? But this has got to be an unprecedented amount of loan volume coming through banks, coming through the SBA.
Right.
It's really unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I mean, the banks right now certainly must be, fairly inundated preparing for this wave of applications. I'm assuming this is going to be an online application, or else I don't know how else it would be facilitated in a very efficient way. But you bring up another point. This is going to be such a much needed relief or stimulus for the business community. And most, if not all, businesses under 500 employees should theoretically qualify to at least apply. I think the question on the back end is $350 billion has been set aside to fund this loan provision. Whether that's actually going to be enough money, and there's already, I think, talk in the world of politics as to whether they're going to have to go back to Congress for additional funding to help facilitate all of the qualified applications.
Yeah, that was going to be my last question. Have you heard of any additional relief or stimulus that might be made available somewhere down the road?
Yeah, nothing formally at this point, but I have to imagine that there's probably a phase 2 aspect of any type of stimulus package, relief package, economic support, or perhaps with some of these provisions, just additional funding. I mean, if you think about it, for businesses under 500 employees who are suffering economic hardship right now, which so many are across the country, you have to wonder how long that $350 billion will last, right? And I would have to imagine that discussions are already underway as to how to make sure there's ample funds available.
Yeah, well, we've heard stories. I know you have as well, of business owners, restaurants, construction, real estate, you name it, and people are they're hurting. And I think this is exactly what they need, which is kind of just a little bit of a bridge from hopefully now to when we get on the other side of this. And I'm mindful of what happened with the DECD last week, that they opened up their program and they closed it down 24 hours later because the demand, they couldn't handle all the applications. I'm hoping that this longer on-ramp for this program, they'll be able to, I guess, digest more applications.
Yeah, and that's a very valid concern, and I do wonder if that's part of the reason why so much of this will be driven through the banks, and making sure that they have the IT platform and infrastructure and bandwidth to be able to sustain the application process and the volume of data that's going to be shared and submitted. Yeah, it's a valid concern.
Awesome. All right, Jay, we'll let you get back to your day job and probably your night job too these days. But really want to thank you very much for taking some time, helping us, Connecticut Wealth Management, and our clients understand a little bit more about this program, kind of the nuts and bolts and what people should be thinking about doing next. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and have a good night. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good to see you guys, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
All the best, Jay.
All right, thanks, Kevin.